This parcel of land is no longer your property. Depart before we involve law enforcement. Regarding the arrangement of components, the construction supervisor yelled, forcefully moving the senior farmer from the terrain he had tilled for 4 decades. Onlookers merely observed without a word. Yet, precisely 1 day later, over 100 former servicemen from various parts of the state had congregated, arrayed in formation in front of that identical parcel of land. A bond formed in conflict now reestablished. Henry Collins, aged 67, was not merely an ordinary agriculturalist. Following distinguished service to his nation over 2 deployments in Vietnam, he had come back to the sole existence he understood, cultivating the ground bequeathed to him by his father. For many years, his hardened palms had drawn forth maize, squash, and legumes from the earth, providing sustenance not only for himself but also distributing it to the whole locality. His agricultural stall had gained renown across 3 counties due to its system based on trust. Acquire what you require, contribute what you are able. The day's light had scarcely appeared when the construction crew materialized at his entrance. Their costly sport utility vehicles seemed incongruous beside the time-worn fence supports and modest farmhouse, where American flags had been displayed without interruption since 1975. Individuals in high-priced attire held notebooks and surveying instruments. Their gleaming footwear was swiftly sullied by the early morning moisture. Mr. Collins, the construction supervisor declared, not troubling himself to take off his eyewear, this terrain has been redesignated by the municipal government for business purposes. The financial settlement was dispatched to you 3 months prior. We require your immediate departure to adhere to our building timetable. Henry remained aghast, his hold intensifying on his aged leather work gloves. I put my signature on no document. I never consented to a sale. This agricultural property is my entire possession. To what place could I possibly relocate? The supervisor's tone became frigid. The legality of the matter is for the judicial system to decide, but you must clear the property today. The county has already granted the necessary permissions. Advancement cannot be delayed by emotional attachments. When Henry declined to depart, the team commenced taking apart his fence. Supports that had endured for generations were forcibly removed from the earth. Laborers crushed recently emerged plants Flora Henry had meticulously nurtured since the initial warming of spring, heritage crops passed down within his family for generations. One laborer even pushed Henry, making him stagger in reverse. Simply hang up your hat already, elderly fellow. Your era has concluded. Besides, this method of farming is obsolete. Individuals from residences in the vicinity congregated due to the disturbance. A number recorded events with their mobile devices, yet none intervened. No one voiced opposition. A particular woman averted her gaze with a sense of culpability when Henry made eye contact with her. She had been obtaining complimentary produce from him for numerous years during periods of hardship. As the forenoon advanced, Henry's opposition diminished. The official documents presented to him were filled with jargon he could not entirely grasp and bore signatures he did not recall making. By the middle of the day, earth-moving machinery had already started to clear the northern boundary of his land, removing an apple grove his forefather had established. The setting sun observed Henry seated in solitude on a fractured fence support. His time-worn palms held a handful of moist earth, ground he had cultivated for 4 decades. His countenance was streaked with soil, yet not with moisture from his eyes. Former servicemen are not meant to weep, he had been instructed, even as their existence disintegrates around them. As dusk fell, a local broadcast vehicle departed, having acquired sufficient material for a concise human interest piece. The journalist had posed trivial inquiries, demonstrating greater interest in the forthcoming modern retail center than in individual forfeiting his legacy. Henry observed their departure, then lowered his gaze to the soil in his hand. This terrain was more than mere real estate, it was the sole abode he had known since his return from armed conflict, the only location where he had experienced tranquility following the persistent nocturnal terrors. By the ensuing morning, video segments depicting the elderly farmer being removed from his land had circulated widely on the internet. However, the narrative had been altered and skewed to represent Henry as a disoriented senior citizen obstructing employment opportunities and economic advancement. Local news outlets characterized it as an elderly agriculturalist overstating his reaction to an authorized development initiative projected to create 300 jobs for their economically challenged locality. A well-known television personality remarked, "It is regrettable, but we cannot permit sentiment to obstruct economic advancement. Periodically, the established must yield to the novel. That is simply the nature of existence." Individuals Henry had regarded as companions for many years did not return his telephone calls. A neighbor who had benefited from Henry's produce for years merely stated, "It's unfortunate, but what options are there? Times evolve." Furthermore, a new retail complex would be practical. "I am weary of traveling 30 minutes to purchase respectable attire." The neighborhood eatery where Henry had consumed his Sunday breakfast for 4 decades unexpectedly had no tables free. The server, who had attended to him for 20 years, was unable to meet his gaze as the proprietor requested his departure. "We are simply overly occupied at present, Henry. Perhaps attempt again tomorrow." Henry declined to yield without resistance. He maneuvered his antiquated pickup truck to the county records department, submitting a formal grievance. The attendant scarcely glanced up from her computer screen as he neared the service desk. "The documentation has been concluded," she stated without emotion. "There is no lawful foundation for your protest. The county governing body unanimously sanctioned the rezoning 6 months prior. However, I was never informed," Henry asserted, his voice escalating. "That parcel of land has belonged to my lineage for 3 generations. I was not even afforded an opportunity to address the assembly." "Sir, kindly reduce your volume," the attendant replied. "The announcement was lawfully disseminated in the county's official publication. It is not our responsibility that you fail to peruse it. Security personnel will remove you if you cannot conduct yourself suitably." Henry's posture sagged as he departed the administrative structure. The framework he had strived to defend in foreign lands now seemingly offered him no standing. The national emblem pin on his outerwear, previously displayed with self-respect, now seemed a bitter mockery. That evening, Henry found himself alone in his garage. He retrieved an aged wooden container holding his military decorations, campaign charts, and images of long-deceased fellow soldiers. With unsteady hands, he took down the American flag that had been displayed with honor outside his residence since his return from military duty. Through the casement, he could observe his field, now delineated with surveyor's markers and bright orange construction ribbon. Distractedly, he manipulated the wedding band he continued to wear, though his spouse had departed years before. Sarah would have understood the proper course of action. She invariably possessed the appropriate words when he lacked them. His thoughts wandered to recollections of warfare, comrades in arms perishing near him, their final reflections invariably centered on home, on American territory, the very ground now being taken from him. In the distance, illumination for nighttime operations had been erected. The developers were not squandering any time. By daybreak, his cornfield would be entirely gone. Henry returned his bronze star to its container. Its significance was no longer remembered by anyone. The cost of it all had faded from memory. The commendation stated, "For bravery under immense pressure." Yet, where did bravery reside in the contemporary world? Where was integrity? No one supported him. No one recalled his past sacrifices for this nation. The subsequent day, a reverberating noise was audible from afar. The distinct sound of military transport vehicles and the measured cadence of footwear striking the ground in formation. The noise intensified until it became unavoidable, even for the construction personnel who had shown up at first light to resume the clearing. Henry emerged onto his veranda, coffee cup in hand, scarcely able to credit what he saw. Extending along the complete boundary of his land were hundreds of individuals, both male and female, attired in well-worn military garments. They bore no armaments, but rather something of greater impact. A vast sign proclaiming, "This land was earned, not bought. Former service members from all military departments, representing conflicts from Vietnam to Afghanistan, were positioned side by side. At their head was retired Colonel Marcus Hale, his uniform adorned with decorations that reflected the early morning rays. Formerly the leader of Henry's unit in Vietnam, the colonel moved with a minor unsteadiness, a lasting mark from a conflict where Henry had rescued him. The colonel neared Henry, offering a sharp salute. "We are not assembled to demonstrate, Collins," he declared, his voice resonating across the suddenly stilled field. "We are present to attest. This individual rescued our comrades, and America does not forsake its champions." Construction personnel halted their activities. Machinery became inactive, as news teams hurried to document the unforeseen turn of events. Mobile phones captured every moment as former service members created a human barricade along the edge of the property. A veteran with white hair came forward, displaying a military map on which Henry's name was prominently indicated, specifying his vital assistance function during the 1968 Tet Offensive, where he had kept up radio communications despite sustaining 2 injuries. Another veteran unbuttoned his garment, showing a prominent scar on his chest. "Henry transported me 8 kilometers to the encampment after our vehicle was struck. Were it not for him, I would not be present today. I would not have encountered my spouse. My offspring would not be alive." Individually, they recounted narratives, instances of courage, selflessness, and understated valor that Henry had never disclosed, not even to his most intimate acquaintances. Accounts of a youthful serviceman who consistently jeopardized his own safety for his fellow soldiers, seeking no recompense. National television outlets commenced live transmissions. Social media platforms were inundated with depictions of veterans aligned, a tangible barrier of mutual support. Digital tags calling for fairness proliferated, and within a few hours, the state executive's office released a declaration vowing to investigate the matter without delay. Local inhabitants, witnessing the assembly on their televisions, started to arrive bearing sustenance, water, and their personal American flags. Youngsters solicited signatures from the veterans. Senior neighbors who had observed from their windows the preceding day now stood with pride next to the veterans, some presenting old pictures of Henry from local gatherings, autumn celebrations, and philanthropic efforts he had discreetly arranged over many years. A youthful legal professional advanced, the offspring of a serviceman Henry had rescued. "I will act as your counsel without charge, sir. Their actions are not merely ethically reprehensible. I contend they are also legally dubious. The notification procedure was intentionally made unclear. We shall contest this through to the highest state court if required." By mid-afternoon, the development firm released a rushed announcement. "In consideration of public apprehension, we are halting work for the time being to reevaluate the project's effects. We hold the service of veterans in high regard and aim for a settlement that acknowledges their sacrifices." As daylight started to diminish, Henry was situated in the midst of a ring created by his past comrades. They remained rigidly upright, acknowledging him with the identical deference shown to their most senior officers. Colonel Hale advanced, and with Henry, they hoisted the American flag once more, securing it resolutely in the pile of soil the earth movers had created. The diminishing illumination highlighted the moisture on the countenances of battle-hardened servicemen who had vowed to never weep again. And for the initial occasion in many years, Henry Collins wept freely, without embarrassment. A week thereafter, Henry's land was provisionally classified as a Veterans Memorial Community Area while court actions proceeded. What commenced as a straightforward gesture of support had evolved into something considerably more meaningful. A countrywide dialogue regarding the esteem we assign to those who have served and the genuine essence of community. Youngsters from the vicinity came to Henry for instruction in horticulture. The rows of corn and produce that had been crushed were replanted, not solely by Henry, but by numerous assisting individuals. Nearby enterprises contributed seeds, implements, and watering systems. A building firm proposed to reconstruct the impaired portions of the farmhouse at no cost. A little girl gazed up at him as she placed a seed into the earth. "Mr. Henry, is this parcel of land truly yours now?" she inquired, her tiny digits gently patting soil over the seed. Henry offered a soft smile. "No, my dear. It is the property of those who possess the courage to advocate for what is just. It is the property of individuals like yourself, who will cultivate things long after my time has passed." A woman delivered floral tributes to the periphery of the field, the bereaved spouse of a serviceman who did not return. A man Henry had endeavored to rescue during their concluding operation together. "He consistently stated you were the most courageous among them all," she conveyed to Henry, her voice faltering, "because your struggle did not cease with the war, but persisted each day thereafter. You embraced the existence they were denied, maintaining a connection to the earth, nurturing growth, and finding reconciliation with the past." National media outlets reported, "The reserved veteran who compelled a system to pay attention." Opinion pieces discussed not merely Henry's situation, but also hundreds of comparable instances nationwide where development initiatives had uprooted susceptible populations. Investigative reporters found that the development firm had employed analogous methods in 7 additional localities, specifically aiming at senior landowners with perplexing notifications and shortened deadlines. The county board members responsible for approving the project encountered probing inquiries at a specially convened town hall session, broadcast live across the nation. "How could you neglect to personally inform a decorated veteran prior to seizing his land?" a young mother questioned, displaying a photograph of her own father in uniform. "Is this our manner of expressing gratitude to those who serve?" The Development Corporation, confronted with extraordinary public examination and boycotts of its other holdings, declared a thorough revision of its plan, one that would safeguard Henry's farm as an operational learning facility, encircled by smaller, locally owned enterprises. "We have heeded the community's voice," their chief executive affirmed, though few accepted the sincerity of this apparent change of heart. 3 months subsequently, a formal event took place on the disputed land. The American flag, which had previously hung without notice outside Henry's unassuming dwelling, was meticulously folded with military exactitude, then given back to him by the very comrades he had rescued decades prior, now with gray hair but standing with dignity. As Henry received the flag, Colonel Hale spoke to the assembled attendees. "America is not merely a geographical location. It represents a commitment that those who make sacrifices for her will neither be forgotten nor cast aside." On this day, we have honored that commitment not solely to Henry, but to ourselves. Henry's narrative resonated well beyond his minor locality. Veterans associations throughout the country started to create community gardens on unused parcels of land. Legal support centers specializing in land ownership rights for veterans were established in 5 states. A legislative proposal supported by both political parties, mandating distinct notification protocols for veterans involved in property disagreements, gained unforeseen momentum in the national legislature. And Henry? He persisted in his agricultural pursuits, though now seldom by himself. Each Saturday, helpers joined him, acquiring abilities many had thought were irretrievably lost. He initiated a program to instruct returning veterans in methods of sustainable farming, discovering that engaging with the earth possessed therapeutic qualities for those still burdened by the unseen injuries of conflict. "Not all who forfeit their land forfeit everything," a national periodical noted in its feature on Henry. A man prepared to remain solitary amidst devastation, yet still advocate for justice, safeguards honor for an entire generation. Certain conflicts are waged with armaments. Others are waged with fortitude, communal spirit, and an unyielding conviction in the importance of fairness. The concluding scene, a multitude of American flags set in freshly prepared earth, poised for spring cultivation, achieved iconic status, a representation of defiance, remembrance, and rejuvenation.